Welcome back to another episode of the What We're Watching podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jenny, and today we're talking about 17 again.
I love this movie. I forgot how much I really, really love it.
I haven't seen this movie probably since it came out, and I was pleasantly surprised.
I think it really holds up. I mean, there are definitely some aspects of it that are, dodgy. We'll talk about it. But the humor and, the comedy throughout the movie I thought was really funny.
And just, the storytelling in general. It was such a tight movie. The character arcs and everything.
Totally.
I feel like it was the perfect example of things that we've learned in writing classes in the past. And now stuff clicks a little bit better. Maybe I'll get into it when we actually talk about the movie. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by this movie. In this episode, we're talking about the surprising web of cast connections in 17 again, Zac Efron's health scare on set, and what the stars have said since losing both Matthew Perry and Michelle Trachtenberg.
This movie is so funny and happy in my brain that it was a really interesting mix of emotions watching it again now that we have lost Matthew Perry and Michelle Trachtenberg. And I completely forgot that they were in this movie. And so then watching it again and having them pop up, it was very sad. It was emotional, but also I love this movie. And so it was also really nice.
Yeah, it was nice to see them in this movie together. And Michelle, I definitely forgot she was in this movie.
And she's a big part.
She is a big part. And I love her so much. You know that I'm watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer right now. I'm 8 episodes away from being done with the entire show.
Jenny is always watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, okay?
It's taken me 3 years to get through all 7 seasons, but I'm finally almost there, and then I will probably shut up about it. But I see Michelle Trachtenberg every night on my screen when I'm catching up on Buffy. But it was nice to see her a little bit older in this role.
Totally. Also, disclaimer, I recently moved and my office is empty. So if it sounds a little echoey, my apologies. So the logline for 17 again is Mike O'Donnell, played by Matthew Perry, was a high school basketball star with a bright future, but he threw it all away to marry his girlfriend and raise their child. Almost 20 years later, Mike's marriage has failed, his kids think he's a loser, and his job is going nowhere. He gets a chance to correct the mistakes of his past and change his life when he is miraculously transformed into a teenager. That's Zac Efron, plays his younger self. But in trying to fix his past, Mike may be jeopardizing his present and future.
Okay, question. Is there any world where you would cast Zac Efron as young Matthew Perry?
No. I don't know how they came to this pair.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah. There are holes, okay? You guys know we always point out the holes, the reality holes of this movie, and some of them are the fact that, they are supposed to play the younger and older version of each other, and also the fact that, we'll get into this, but his best friend doesn't recognize him, even though it's his teenage self.
And his old coach, and, so many, his kids don't know what he looked like when he was a teenager, and he was the cutest teenager, so, why wouldn't they know that? And their mom met him in high school,
So there's definitely photos. There must be photos in their house of them in high school or very young. So that's so weird to me.
It is. Yeah, that's a plot hole for sure.
We overlook. It's okay.
Yeah, we do because we like them in this movie. 17 again came out in 2009. Now, it is not to be confused with another movie called 17 again, which came out in 2000 starring Tia Tamera and Taj Mowry.
Whoa.
Do you know about this movie?
No, I've never heard of this.
Okay, this was one of my favorite movies growing up.
Whoa. Oh my gosh. Imagine if you had watched and outlined that 17 again and I had watched and prepped for the Zac Efron version and we were just lost right now.
We would be so confused. We'd have to cancel the episode. But I loved that movie growing up, and I remember when this movie came out, I was kind of confused because I was like, is it a remake of the one that I used to watch in 2000? But no, it's actually not related at all. But it has a really similar plot because I can't remember exactly, but they turn their grandparents young again because they use a special engineered soap.
Cool.
Because I think Taj Mowry is a science whiz.
It is crazy that two movies with the same name, both starring Disney teen stars of the same era came out less than a decade apart with a very similar plot. That feels like I'm surprised there wasn't a lawsuit in there somewhere.
Yeah, the difference is that the 2000 movie spells out the word 17, and that's it.
That is not a big enough difference, in my opinion.
Especially because it really did confuse me.
Yeah.
And when you search 17 again, the other one comes up.
Interesting.
I think that we should do an episode on that one day because I think it's a fun movie. So.
Okay. Listeners, you guys will have to let us know if you've seen this movie because I had never even heard of it.
I know. Is it just a really niche reference? Maybe. We'll see. So actually, 17 Again is a remake, but it's not a remake of the Tia and Tamara movie. It's a remake of the 1986 Disney TV movie called Young Again, which was one of Keanu Reeves' first roles.
Whoa.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Okay, well now I feel like I need to watch Young Again also. This is just a web of movies that's growing.
This must just be like a really interesting concept for humans to consider because there's another movie with a similar premise that was made in 1988 called 18 Again, but it's not a remake. This 17 Again has nothing to do with 18 Again.
It has nothing to do with 18 Again. It has nothing to do with the other 17 Again, but it does have something to do with Young Again. This is confusing.
It is very confusing.
Okay.
17 Again was directed by Burr Gore Steers, who was the screenwriter for How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Wow. Cool.
So we like his work.
Love.
He also directed Charlie St. Cloud featuring Zac Efron, which I think was after this, so he must have loved working with Zac.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I have in my brain that Zac is just the best guy. And like, kill me now because like, we always say this, that we love insert Hollywood man. And then I know that it's going to be a disaster 5 years from now and something comes out about him. But I just imagine that he's a great guy. Actually, maybe that's because I watched the last season of Traitors and his little brother was on Traitors and he was extremely lovable. So that just made me feel like the Efron boys are little sweeties.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Do you know what I found out when researching this that surprised me? Zac Efron is 5'8". Does that surprise you?
A short king.
He's a short king. A short buff king.
I think my brain just broke. You're telling me he became famous playing a basketball player, like being the school's best basketball player in High School Musical and in this movie. And he's 5'8", which means they cast everybody around him also short for the basketball team because otherwise he would stick out like a sore thumb. Like we would have noticed.
Yeah, or they like filmed in a really creative way so we didn't notice. For High School Musical, it makes sense because he was also playing younger. And in this movie, too, him playing younger, I kind of get it.
No.
But yeah, I was super surprised by his height.
That is my husband's height, actually. And he loves Zac Efron, so I can't wait to tell him this.
Oh, he's going to be
thrilled. So excited. In my head, Zac Efron is absolutely 6'2".
Really? I was thinking 5'10".
Okay.
He gives shorter energy to me, but not 5'8". Like, I was very surprised. That's only 1 inch taller than Tom Cruise, who is like the iconic short king.
Yeah. I feel like we need to take to social media and tell the girls.
We should tell them. We should.
I'm like shook. I had no idea. I've never heard anybody talk about Zac Efron being short, ever.
Mm-hmm. It kind of makes me love him more. I don't know.
Me too.
I don't know why.
It makes me want to meet him more.
Because he won't be towering over you?
Yes.
You can look directly in his eyes and be like, hey.
Hey.
Okay, well, that's on our list.
Okay.
I don't have to say it, but I will say it anyway. Zac Efron is in High School Musical, Hairspray, The Iron Claw, The Greatest Showman, Baywatch, many other things. But I did kind of get confused on the timeline. I was like, when was 17 Again? So High School Musical was 2006 to 2008. Hairspray was right in the middle of that, 2007. And then 17 Again was a year after High School Musical in 2009.
Okay. I feel like Zac Efron is the epitome of like, don't forget that everyone in Hollywood was a theater kid. you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to look at him in these roles like High School Musical and 17 again and be like, yeah, the jock. Like, he's very charming. He's like funny. He has the trendy hair, he was the jock. And then Hairspray is smack in the middle of those. And he also crushed that. And you're
He
just like,
crushed. And The
yes,
Greatest
okay.
Showman.
Yeah. He's a theater boy. I love him.
He's actually a really good actor. Now that I think about it, I'm like, wait, I do really like Zac Efron as an actor.
I do too.
And I really think that, well, I guess Hairspray was kind of his launch into like serious things. And by
Mm-hmm.
serious, I mean just like not Disney Channel original movies.
Mm-hmm.
But that was pretty quick because if that was like right after High School Musical 1.
Yeah, I feel like he and Vanessa just blew up immediately. And there was
Mm-hmm.
probably just a grab of like, I'm sure he got offers to do a ton of different things. And I love that he picked Hairspray.
Me
We should do
too.
an episode on Hairspray. That would be great. And The Greatest Showman.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about those, but they're great. Zac Efron was 22 in 17 again, which I just always think is interesting when someone's playing like a very specific age. I kind of want to know how old they actually were.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he called Matthew Perry for help with his lines and on how to mimic his movements so that he could give a more authentic performance.
Cute. Even though Matthew Perry is in like 2 scenes.
I know.
And it really should have been the other way around.
And I really did try to look out for that when I watched it, and I really couldn't see a difference. I wish I could. I just don't have that eye, I guess.
Yeah, no, I never would have noticed. Well, also because they look so different.
Yeah.
And because maybe it's just because we didn't see enough of Matthew Perry in this movie to notice, but it's not like he had a distinct mannerism that then Zach could have incorporated, like there was nothing to make him feel unique. So where if Zach copied it, you'd be like, ah, that's a Matthew thing.
Mm-hmm. There were like a little bit of Chandler Bing-esque type of things that I did notice him do, but I think that's just how he is. So I don't know.
I will say for Matthew Perry not being in this movie that much, the handful of people that I told that either we were covering this or that I was watching this just were like, oh my God, the movie with Chandler Bing. That's what everyone took away from 17 again. So I think that's funny.
It's funny because all I think of is Zac Efron when I think of this movie, so I actually forgot that Matthew Perry was him.
Me too.
So I mentioned earlier that Zac Efron had a bit of a health scare in this movie. It was towards the end of filming, and he had appendicitis and ended up having surgery.
Ooh.
And then there's this wild story about the director or some crew member telling him, oh, just hang upside down and it'll go away. Like they didn't know it was appendicitis, but his side hurt. So they were like, hang upside down.
Hang upside down.
Uh-huh.
Did he do it?
I think he did it.
And it obviously didn't help.
It didn't help. No, he had to get his appendix taken out.
Oh, ugh. Sucks.
Yeah, it really does. I've heard that's like such a painful thing. And then this is like a crazy fun fact, but Hunter Parrish, who plays the bad boy Stan in this movie, originally auditioned for Troy Bolton in High School Musical.
Wow. What a crossover.
And I feel like we'll keep talking about it, but there are so many connections with like people who were in movies together, or like I already talked about the director doing Charlie St. Cloud. So yeah, this was one of them that I was like, wait, I haven't even seen this fun fact anywhere.
Cool. Wait, sorry. I have one more thing to say about Zac Efron.
Say it.
It's not even, I don't even know what to say, but I feel like we need to address like the drastic change in his appearance over the recent years.
Yes, okay, when did we talk about this last? Was it in our High School Musical episode?
I think it must have been.
Yeah.
I don't remember actually what we said in that episode, but I'm sure we could just echo the same thing. But knowing that he's 5'8" makes me wonder if that played a part in this.
Yeah, so for those of you who are like maybe wondering what we're talking about, it's very evident that Zac Efron has had plastic surgery
Mm-hmm.
and his face looks very different than it did, I would say, just a few years ago.
Definitely.
And I think this is a topic of conversation anytime I see him promoting a new movie. People are like, what happened to his face?
Yep.
The official answer, I think, is that he broke his jaw and then had to get it reconstructed.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that I'm not trying to say I don't buy it. I know he did break his jaw, and I'm sure that was really painful. And I also think that he has access to the best surgeons ever.
Totally.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, yeah, also make my jaw look like this, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely clear that his jaw is the main feature in his face that has changed, and that's such a defining feature. But it definitely also looks drastically different. So maybe it's one of those scenarios like this happens all the time when people break their nose.
Hmm.
When it's like, "Oh, can you also change the aesthetic of it while it's being fixed?" That happens all the time. So it would not surprise
Yeah.
me if that was a similar situation to what he was going through. It makes me sad, but also it's so hard and weird to talk about like celebrity plastic surgery, and maybe we just shouldn't talk about it. Like maybe we shouldn't be talking about people's appearance at all. I feel like most of the time I fall into that camp, but it does make me sad when I see somebody change their appearance so much. We talked about this in the Ferris Bueller's Day Off episode when we talked about Ferris's sister Jeni and how she regrets her nose job. And I think it must be so difficult to live in the Hollywood bubble where everyone has money and access to be able to change their body and manipulate their appearance in any way they want to for the most part, to feel pressured like you also need to. But then if you do too much or in a way people don't like, everyone's going to comment on it. It's going to become the object of speculation. So then you're expected to come out and say, yes, I did get plastic surgery. And then everyone's going to talk about it even more. That's exhausting.
It sounds so exhausting. I actually can't imagine
No.
being a celebrity at all.
Yeah.
I feel like we already face like so many different societal pressures, whether it's like appearance related or not. But then imagine that being magnified to like the entire world.
Hmm.
I can't. So I will always stand up for Zac Efron and his plastic surgery. But I do agree, like he does look different. I think that's just an objective statement.
Totally. Of
Wait, can we talk about one more thing with like surgery and appearance? Have
course.
we talked about this before? I feel like we probably have because this is like one of my hyperfixations. When celebrities get their teeth fixed, they get veneers.
I think we have talked about this.
There are just a couple that really make me sad. And like if they feel so much more confident, it's totally fine. But who's the guy who plays Finnick Odair?
Oh, I don't remember his name, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
Sam Claflin? That sounds right. I don't know. He had the cutest teeth before. He had the cutest smile, and then he got veneers. And now he's still handsome, but it's just different. He has a different look now. And Ian Somerhalder, too.
Yeah.
They had really cute 2000s boy teeth.
I've seen a lot of people on social media over the last 6 months or so start to like call out veneers and how everyone has them because it's trickling out of celebrity also. It's like becoming just much more trendy. I see it
Hmm.
every time I like look for a dentist. I feel like it's constantly advertised on on like different dentists' websites. So like I would not be surprised if that becomes like a marker of the time. Like if people move away from that and then that becomes like a very 2010s, 2020s thing, you know?
That's like when people are like, oh, the mason jar weddings, that's like a
Yes.
very specific period of time.
Yep,
But yeah, that
totally.
that might be the marker. You're right. Interesting. Okay, we can move on from plastic surgery and appearance now. I just think it's an interesting topic always.
Agreed. Okay, let's dive into Matthew Perry, who plays Mike.
He's from Friends, Ally McBeal, The Whole Nine Yards, and The Odd Couple, which I didn't know about, but that was a show that he co-developed and starred in with Thomas Lennon, who plays his best friend Ned in this movie.
Oh my gosh,
I
cute.
know, and it was much later. It was way after this movie, so I don't know if this is the movie where they got close or they already were close.
Cute. I love that.
Yeah. We talked a lot about him in our Friends episode because he had just passed away when we did our Friends episode. I think that was in 2023. Yeah, it had to be in 2023 because that's when he passed away. But I'll give you the TLDR. So, most of his life, he suffered from severe addictions to drugs and alcohol, and he actually became an advocate for rehabilitation. This was his last theatrical film appearance in 17 again, even though it was 2009.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Because I guess he just no longer acted in movies after this. He did a lot of TV shows. He famously dated Julia Roberts and Lizzie Kaplan, who's Janice from Mean Girls.
Those are two celebrities that I like don't compute exist at the same time. Are they similar age?
I don't know. But you're right. Julia and Lizzie, I can't imagine being together. Also, Lizzie and Matthew, I can't imagine being together.
No. I can see Julia Roberts and Matthew.
Me too. And I think because their relationship was maybe more public too. I don't know.
Yeah.
He wrote a memoir in 2022 about his life called Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. We talked about this more in our Friends episode, but he talks about his struggles with addiction pretty openly in it. And he also shares some like general weird behavior that he had around the women he dated. I think he didn't have a lot of self-worth, and that caused him to self-sabotage relationships a lot.
Mm.
And he seemed a little bit obsessive with Julia Roberts. So yeah, I think go listen to that episode if you want more details, because it's a little fuzzy for me.
Do you remember if he talked about it in like a self-aware way? Or were you noticing that it was weird?
I didn't read the book. I listened to the Celebrity Memoir Book Club podcast about it. So they were not into it.
Mm.
And that is my only reference point.
Okay.
But I usually trust them. So
I do too. I really like them.
So when he passed away in October 2023, it was from accidental drowning in his hot tub due to ketamine. 5 people were charged in connection with helping him acquire lethal doses of it and injecting him with it.
Wow.
So I guess he was doing ketamine therapy for anxiety, but then he was like pressuring his doctors or people that he knew who had questionable practices, and he got more ketamine from them, and they were injecting him with it.
Oh, that's really sad.
Mm-hmm. So I think it was accidental, but yeah, just not good.
Mm.
However, I did find what the cast had to say about Matthew after his passing, and I found a lot of really sweet quotes and things, so I'll read them. Zac Efron said, "Collaborating with him, it was so much fun and really did propel me and motivate me in so many ways. It really pushed me into the next chapter of my career, and for that, thank you so much, Matthew. Thinking about you a lot today."
Sweet.
Also, Matthew Perry apparently wanted to make a biopic about his own life, starring Zac Efron.
Stop. He said, let's run it back.
He did.
Zac
He
Efron
really did.
will be the young version of me.
No, literally.
Oh my God, I love that. Wait, I wonder if they would do it now.
I think they might do a biopic.
He wrote a memoir.
But I don't know that they would do it with Efron. I don't think so.
Let's manifest that.
I hope they do. I think it would be a really interesting thing, and I think Matthew Perry would have been down for it.
Clearly, I bet he would have, because he also came out with the book the year before he passed, and if he said that he wanted Zac to play him, Zac clearly holds him in high regard, and I think it would be really meaningful for him to do that, so that would be really cool to see.
Yeah. I guess Matthew said that he wanted Zac to play him again because he did such a good job the first time around. And I know. And Zac's response to that was, "I'm honored to hear he was thinking of me to play him. We'll see. I'd be honored to do it. He was a mentor to me, and we made a really cool film together. I looked up to him. I learned comedic timing from that guy."
Cute.
Sweet. Also, I don't know if I believe this, but several sources reported on an insider saying that Michelle Trachtenberg was really rattled by Matthew's death, which I'm sure she would. But this insider said that she feared she would die young. And yeah, that is sad.
That's
sad to hear now.
Yeah.
Okay, Thomas Lennon, who played Ned, the best friend in this movie, I already said that he worked with Matthew after this. He wrote a really sweet thing for Variety, and I'm just going to read it real quick. "Matthew Perry told me a lot of stories, none of which can be printed in Variety. Maddie lived messy. Maddie had huge feelings and was not afraid to make you a part of those feelings. A comedy sword swallower using real swords. The swords hurt. Maddie was a cartoon mascot for anxiety wrapped in the packaging of a matinee idol, Canadian tennis pro, heartthrob with a racing heart, playwright, accidental superstar. Maddie had a lot of pain. He wore it on his sleeve. Maddie would lend you his jacket, which smelled like cigarettes, and still had the pain right there on the sleeve. Maddie would lend you cigarettes. Maddie joked when he was worried, and he was worried more than you might think. The butt of Matthew Perry's best jokes was always Matthew Perry. Maddie admitted when he had messed up, which was constantly. Maddie was easy to forgive. The world that was in the palm of his hand was in a tug of war with the world on his shoulders. Maddie was always trying to get better. Maddie was ready to talk. Maddie didn't want to be alone. Maddie wanted to make you laugh, even if swallowing the swords hurt.
It's like making me emotional.
It's really sad.
It's really sad. It's really sweet. Like, ugh.
And it seems true to who Matthew Perry actually was, you know? Like, I think he would probably, not that I know anything about him really, but I think he would find this touching if he had heard it, you know?
Also, something that I'm like hearing in this, which is nice it feels validating for me personally because I struggle with a lot of anxiety, is the like seriousness of them talking about him struggling with that. Because something that I notice is how flippantly I think we talk about being anxious because anxiety is a feeling. This is what my therapist told me actually when I brought this up. Is that anxiety is a feeling that everybody feels, but when it is something that you struggle with, or if you have like diagnosed anxiety disorders, it's different than just like everyday feeling anxious. And so having it be discussed in this like severity just like feels a little validating to me.
Yeah, I
Maybe
could see
that's
that
weird,
too.
but
No, I don't think that's weird because I actually relate to that a lot as somebody who also experiences anxiety.
yeah. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about Leslie Mann, who plays Scarlett. If you guys listened to our 100th episode, you know that Leslie Mann is one of my top actors of all time, one of my faves. So I love that she's in this movie. I would watch anything she's in.
I don't think I knew how much you loved Leslie Mann, and we've never talked about her on the podcast, I don't think.
Mm-mm.
I don't think I've seen many of her movies, actually, so she's not someone that comes to mind for me a lot. I actually know not much about her. You'll have to fill me in if I
Yeah,
miss anything.
honestly, I don't know if I know all that much about her either. It's just everything that I have seen that she's in, I really love.
Yeah. Well, here are some of the other things that she's in for those who need a refresher. She's in The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, This Is 40, The Other Woman, The Bling Ring, Funny People, bunch of other things, but you get the idea. She was actually in another body swap movie called The Change Up in 2011. She also plays the wife in that movie. And this is really all I knew about her, which I hate that this is all I know about her. She married director and producer Judd Apatow in 2010. They met while she was auditioning for The Cable Guy, and she's been in a ton of his movies since, and I just mentioned a ton of them. And they have 2 daughters named Maud, who you may know from Euphoria, and Iris, who is best friends with Olivia Rodrigo.
Their social media is very cute. If you follow Leslie Mann on Instagram, she posts a lot about like with their family since they're kind of all public figures now. It's very cute.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, now let's talk about Thomas Lennon, who plays Ned.
He's from Reno 911, I Love You Man, and Animal Control, which is a new show that I only just heard about. He wrote the Night at the Museum movies. No idea.
Whoa. I didn't know he was a writer at all.
No,
So,
I just thought
wow.
he was a comedian. He also wrote The Pacifier and Baywatch, starring Zac Efron.
Everybody loves Zac Efron. That's what I'm taking away from this.
It's like they all worked with him, and then we're like, all right, we're working with you again.
The director, Matthew Perry, Thomas Lennon. Yeah.
Just speaks to what you were saying about how you just think he's a nice guy.
He's a sweetie lover boy in my brain. So I hope that's true.
Yeah, I only feel more confident that you're right. Also, Thomas Lennon was in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. He was Matthew McConaughey's friend in that movie, and I'm assuming that's how he got the role for this because the director of this movie wrote that movie.
I bet you're right. And it's kind of a similar feeling role.
Mm-hmm. He's kind of good at the like best friend. I'm actually surprised he wasn't in, oh, what is that movie with the babies that we talked about?
Oh my gosh.
What to Expect When You're Expecting.
In my brain, he is.
He's one of the dads in the dad group.
Yes, but I think you're right. Wait, he is.
Oh, he is. Wait, did I miss this? You're
He
right.
is. I don't think we talked about him. But
I
he
think
is
you're right.
married to Holly's boss that works at
You're
the
right.
aquarium. Yeah.
I
It's
was
like in my brain, he's definitely in that movie. But I thought you were right. No.
I was like, you know what movie he would be really good in? You know, the one that he's already in. Okay, well, there you go. He has a type of role.
Okay, up next, let's talk about Sterling Knight, who plays Alex.
He's from Sunny with a Chance, Mackenzie Falls, and Starstruck, which is a DCOM that we've gotten some requests for, and I've never seen it. Have you?
Mm-mm, I don't think so.
It was a little past my time, but I would be interested to watch it. He started off in stage productions, but his first on screen role with Disney was as Lily's boyfriend in Hannah Montana.
I think that must be what I recognize him from.
Yeah, I recognize him from Sunny with a Chance because my sister watched that show. And for those who don't know, Demi Lovato was the star of Sunny with a Chance. And I guess he's still friends with Demi in real life today.
Oh, love it. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about Michelle Trachtenberg, who plays Maggie.
She's from Ice Princess, Harriet the Spy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Gossip Girl. You know Michelle. She passed away in February 2025 at the age of 39, and it was very sudden, and she was alone in her New York apartment. There is kind of some mystery around how she died, but apparently she had had a liver transplant shortly before her death.
Mm,
But the official cause of her death was declared to be diabetes.
interesting. I thought it was, I don't know why I just made the assumption that it was drugs.
And it wasn't. No, it was natural causes, they said.
This makes the quote from earlier so much more scary.
I know. It just seems more tragic. Not that it's not tragic when it's drug related or anything, but for it to be
Totally.
so unexpected is just really sad.
For her earlier to be like, I have this fear that I'm gonna die young, and then for it to happen
Yeah.
naturally is, like you said, no matter what, it's obviously devastating. But wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And I couldn't find anything about whether or not she already was diagnosed with diabetes or maybe it was undiagnosed diabetes.
Mm.
I don't think anyone's really clear on that. But yeah, really sad. She was only 13 years younger than Leslie Mann when she played her daughter, which I thought was interesting.
This happens, doesn't
All the
it?
time. All the time.
It's like they want the younger woman to play the middle-aged wife so that she's like
Hot.
hot, and then they want the older woman, not older, but you know what I mean, like older than high school age, to play the high schooler so that she's also hot.
Yep.
And so the mother-daughter end up being like 10 years apart. I can't remember what other movie we talked about that, but we've talked about it before.
It was Mean Girls. Amy
Mm,
Poehler and Rachel McAdams are
yep.
only like 8 or 9 years apart. Wait, 7, maybe 7 years apart. It was like a really weird age difference.
Mhm. Ah, Hollywood.
Hollywood. Jinx. So here's what Thomas Lennon had to say about Michelle. He said, Michelle lit up every scene in 17 again. Such a skilled dramatic actress, but she could switch to comedy with the ease of a figure skater.
That's lovely.
Makes me want to cry because she's our ice princess.
Mhm.
Sterling Knight said, Michelle was generous, kind, and beyond helpful to me as I navigated my first big movie. I had grown up watching her, as we all did, and she always had time for me if I had questions or was struggling. I'll never forget hanging out with Matthew and Michelle in her trailer for hours, talking about life and work, lessons and wisdom they had picked up.
Sweet.
Yeah,
If you guys wanna hear even more about Michelle, we did an Ice Princess episode. I actually think it's our most listened to episode.
it is.
We love that one.
And it was one of our like first ones. I think we were only like 3 or 4 months into the podcast.
Mhm.
We had a viral clip, and that's the one people found us from. If you found us from that episode, I would love to know.
Me too. Okay, should we get into the movie?
Let's do it.
So the movie starts and it's 1989, and 17-year-old Mike O'Donnell, played by Zac Efron, is about to play in a high school championship basketball game that will probably get him a full ride scholarship to college.
Mike's friend Ned is a nerdy small kid who's late because of Dungeons and Dragons. The other boys make fun of him, but Mike always has Ned's back. Everyone loves Mike, and he dances with the cheerleaders on the basketball court. It's very unplanned, but he just like goes up, and the crowd goes wild. So he is Mr. Cool Guy.
Right before the game starts, we see Mike's girlfriend Scarlett tell him that she's pregnant, and we can tell she doesn't want to tell him, but he forces it out of her because he knows something's wrong.
During the game, he's obviously distracted and ends up walking off the court to go after Scarlett, abandoning the chances of a scholarship and his dreams of the future.
Then we cut to 20 years later, and 37-year-old Mike, now played by Matthew Perry, wakes up in his friend Ned's apartment. Older Ned is played by Thomas Lennon, and he's still nerdy, but he's rich now. He just lives by himself in this like giant bachelor pad mansion with all of his video games.
And like his swords on the wall and
Yeah.
stuff.
And we find out that Mike's wife, Scarlett, has filed for divorce, and now Mike is living with Ned.
Mike goes to work, and he's pretty sure he's going to get promoted to regional sales manager. But it goes to someone else, and Mike flips out at his boss because he's been there for 16 years and has the best numbers on the team. He gets fired for his flip out.
So Mike goes to his former high school and walks in the empty basketball court, and he's there like remembering and reminiscing on his glory days when he was the basketball star. We immediately get the sense that Mike feels like he peaked in high school and just feels like his whole life has been a letdown since then. He runs into a janitor, and the janitor says that Mike is a high school star who never quite lived up to his potential, and sooner or later, they all come back to their old school. He says he bets Mike wishes he could do it all over again, and Mike says, "You got that right."
Mike's daughter Maggie, played by Michelle Trachtenberg, and her friends come up to him, and when he looks behind him, the janitor is gone. Maggie's friends are Tia Sarkar, I'm not sure if that's how you say her name, who plays real Eleanor / Vicky in The Good Place, and I guess she was also in The Vampire Diaries, but I don't remember her from there. But I was like, she is so familiar. Oh, it's real Eleanor.
Mm-hmm.
Another friend is Kat Graham, who's Bonnie from The Vampire Diaries. We love her. And the other friend is Melissa Ordway, who I didn't recognize at first, but she's Will's ex-girlfriend in the last song.
I felt like I recognized all of them, and I knew Kat Graham, but I didn't realize what the other two were from, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike says he got off work early and he wants to take Maggie out for ice cream. She says, "Together? Why?" And then he tells her to go get her brother Alex, played by Sterling Knight.
The three go out for ice cream, but the place is crowded with kids, and it's obvious that Mike no longer knows what his teens are into. He doesn't even know that Maggie got into Georgetown. When he drops the kids off at home, they don't even say bye to him. They just go straight into the house.
Then he sees Scarlett, played by Leslie Mann, destroying all of his stuff in the backyard in a wood chipper. And we learn that Mike would often complain about how he wasn't able to do the stuff he wanted to do because of Scarlett, and he would start projects and stop them and make excuses all the time. And he says he's disappointed with his life, and she tears up and says they don't have to hold each other back anymore and that she'll see him in court.
Sad.
Really sad.
Mike drives back in a thunderstorm, and as he's driving, he sees a man standing on a bridge. Mike pulls over to tell him to get down, and it's the janitor. A bus crosses in between them, and then the janitor is gone. So Mike runs to look over the ledge, but then the water turns into this whirlpool with glimpses of his young self inside the whirlpool, and he falls in.
Then we cut to muddy boots and work pants stepping out of Mike's car in the morning, and this is him getting back to Ned's place. And we see Mike hosing himself off in the shower, and then we see his face, and it's Zac Efron. Mike is 17 again. He screams when he sees his reflection, and this wakes up Ned, who is in his Star Wars-themed bed.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Ned starts swinging at Mike with a bunch of medieval weapons, and then they fight with lightsabers while Mike tries to convince Ned who he is. Which I'm like, Ned, you were best friends with him. You know who he is.
Also, normally people don't look that different. Like
True.
they like, yes, okay. To an extent, when you're in your mid-50s or whatever, compared to when you're 17, you look different, but you look like yourself.
I kind of look the same as when I was 12, and I'm 30 now, so I feel like 37-year-old Mike would kind of just look like Zac Efron does now, you know?
Totally. Oh my God, yeah, and he's only 37. Why in my head? He was older, so yeah,
Yeah.
this was not that long ago.
It is something that we just have to pretend doesn't exist. So as Mike is trying to convince Ned who he is, he says, "You have an undescended testicle." And Ned says, "Googleable." The thing that actually convinces him is that he sees a photo of him and Mike in high school, and he realizes that Mike looks exactly the same as the photo.
As the two boys sit with bags of frozen peas on their crotch, Ned says that it's a classic transformation story and thinks it was caused by a spirit guide who was trying to steer Mike onto a better path. Mike realizes that the janitor must have been the spirit guide, and so he goes back to the high school to find him.
He's soaking wet in a suit and is asking everyone where the janitor is, and no one knows who he's talking about. He sees Alex and tries to talk to him, but Alex avoids him and doesn't know him.
Then he sees dripping water and a janitor bucket outside the basketball court and runs back to tell Ned he realized what his spirit guide wants, for him to go back to high school. Ned has a very different opinion of high school and doesn't want to get dragged into Mike's stuff, But then Mike makes him pretend to be his dad so that he can enroll in school.
Okay, question. If you could go back to high school, would you?
Ugh, I don't think so.
Yeah, like maybe for a day just to like feel nostalgic, but I have no desire to like relive anything from
No,
that era.
no. And I had a pretty good high school experience. There's parts of it that yes, but like, I don't think so. I would not want to then have to redo everything from there
True.
forward, you know? I agree with you. If I could do like a week, I would do that.
And then like come back to your current life and be like, "Oh, thank goodness."
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
goodness I don't have to do math anymore.
Yeah.
So Mike and Ned are enrolling in school, and Mike is now wearing all Ed Hardy and a sideways hat because he saw a picture of Kevin Federline wearing the same thing. It is a ridiculous outfit, but I actually forgot how he dressed in this movie, and so I kind of thought he was going to be dressed in that throughout. And it almost didn't even cross my mind that it was weird because I was like, this is the 2000s. People did wear Ed Hardy. Ned is dressed in a leather vest with frosted tips, and Mike says he looks like Clay Aiken. And he kind of does.
He does.
On their way into the office, Mike bumps into a tough kid named Stan, who now has a problem with him.
The principal, Jane Masterson, played by Melora Hardin, is gorgeous, and Ned is flustered immediately by her. And when they shake hands, he won't let go of her hand and then says, I think our hands just made a baby. Ned makes things awkward the whole time, and she makes it clear that she doesn't date her students' parents. And it works, and Mike enrolls in school with a new name, Mark Gold.
We're going to continue referring to Mike as Mike instead of Mark, just for the purposes of keeping things easy. But yeah, if you're confused, don't be. We're talking about young Mike this whole time, Zac Efron. Mike sees Maggie's friends and asks them how it's going, but they make fun of him and say that he robbed K-Fed with his outfit, because obviously they don't know that this is Maggie's dad. Ned says the least he can do is make sure his fake son doesn't look like a douche, so they go shopping.
We cut to Mike arriving at school, driving Ned's Audi and wearing a white t-shirt, black skinny jeans, and a leather jacket. And now everyone is interested in him, including Maggie's friends. Guys, this is the iconic scene where Zac Efron closes the car door and like flings his arm around to put his jacket on. Or maybe his jacket is already on. He just flings his arm around. When this movie came out, this arm swing was my Mr. Darcy hand thing.
I was going to say that. I was going to ask. That's exactly what I was thinking when you said that.
Okay. It just was. I just loved this. And I forgot that this moment even happened. And then when it happened, when I was watching, I was like, oh my God, this is where I fell in love with Zac Efron as a teenager. I know it. I know
You
it.
know what? It makes sense.
Yeah.
Mike gets a call from Scarlett in class and realizes that he's missing a meeting with her and the lawyers. A girl asks Mike if he'd date a 10th grader, and Scarlett's lawyer overhears this and says that she thinks they could try to get full custody of the kids. He flips out and says they can't do that, and he's closer to the kids than they think. And he asks to reschedule. And while he's saying all this, he's looking at Maggie and getting tears in his eyes. Then after he hangs up the phone, he waves to her, and she's really confused why is the new kid interested in me?
Then we see Mike play basketball at the basketball court, and his coach, Coach Murphy, played by Jim Gaffigan, is still here. It's the same guy. And the coach asks him to try out for basketball because he can tell that he's good.
Why does Coach Murphy look exactly the same? And why does he not recognize this boy who was a star on his team?
Excellent points. Excellent.
Who like ran out on a really important game and quit his basketball career. That would be a kid you remember.
For sure.
Anyway, when Mike goes to the bathroom, he finds his son Alex duct taped to the toilet. He's shocked when he finds out that the basketball team did it to Alex, because this whole time he's thought that Alex was on the basketball team and that he's really popular, because he really just like didn't know his kids very well. He helps Alex get free and then tells him that he's Uncle Ned's kid and that they never met because his mom didn't want anyone to know that she had a kid with Ned. And Alex goes, that makes sense.
The two boys sit together at lunch, and Stan, who is the like tough guy at school that Mike bumped into, is the one who is bullying Alex. Alex tells Mike that his sister Maggie is dating Stan, And Stan notices Mike glaring at him and then comes up to mess with Alex in front of him. Mike stands up for Alex and threatens to call Stan's father. It's pretty funny to just see a teenager be like, "I'll call your dad." And then Stan laughs at this and throws his basketball at Mike, but then Mike catches it with one hand and starts spinning it on his finger. And he tells the whole lunchroom that Stan preys on the weak because he's either insecure, his brain is underdeveloped, or he has a small wiener.
Burn.
It's a mic drop moment.
Everyone loves it. When Mike gets home, he tells Ned that he learned at school today that he's a bad dad, and he didn't know about Alex being bullied or Maggie dating a bad guy. He says he thinks he was wrong about his spirit path and that his mission is not actually to relive out his dream, but it's to help his kids.
Mike shows up at his old house and plays basketball with Alex, who is incredible at basketball, and he says he's going to get him on the team, and that will solve everything. Alex obviously doesn't know what he's referring to, but Mike is referring to his, spirit quest that he thinks he's on.
Then Scarlett comes home and does a double take because of how similar Mike / Mark, as his alter ego, looks to her husband in high school. And she grabs his face and she's like, I need to smell him.
Yeah, it's like, this is weird. That's how everyone should be reacting, okay?
Yes, it is. I imagine it would be really weird.
The next day at school, there's a scene where all of the kids are in a sex ed class, and Mike tries to push abstinence in front of Maggie and Stan because he doesn't want her to have sex with him. And he ends up making a speech to the whole class about how special it is to wait to have sex with someone you love. And then he talks about the feeling when you meet your baby girl for the first time. He does this so convincingly also.
Yeah.
And his speech does convince everyone in the class to give back the condoms they were passing out, except Stan, who now says that they have enough condoms for the weekend and takes them all. And then Mike tackles him to the ground, and Stan beats him up, and the video of the fight goes viral.
Ned is excited that Mike got in trouble so he can see the principal again. He shows up in a weird outfit with a cowboy hat, and he tells Mike that he's peacocking. When he comes into the office, the principal says, "Really? Are you peacocking? You think that's going to work?" And Ned says he thinks it just might.
Mike shows up at his old house and chats with Scarlett out front. She shows him the backyard project she's working on and what she envisions for it. And he says, "It's going to be amazing, Scar." And she gets suspicious immediately and says, "My husband is the only one who calls me that." But to change the subject, he asks if she needs help with the backyard. And she says she knows cougars are big with high school boys these days, but wants him to know that's not going to happen. He says he wasn't thinking that, and he just wants business experience. So she awkwardly goes to get him a shovel.
I do think it's funny that they set up this tension immediately where obviously she's attracted to him because that's her husband that she met in high school, you know? But she's like, this is wildly inappropriate. And she, very rightfully so, is setting boundaries. And he just keeps trying to flirt throughout this whole thing. We get a montage of Mike training Alex in basketball, helping out with the backyard, and interrupting Maggie and Stan's makeout sessions by spraying them with the hose or setting off the fire alarm. Meanwhile, Ned does huge gestures for Principal Masterson, like showing up with a big decorated bus for her. Also, Alex catches Mike checking out his mom and pours water on him. And Mike is just kind of like, what? Can you blame me?
Then Alex tries out and makes the basketball team. And Scarlett shows Mike and Alex the backyard renovations that she finally finished. And it's beautiful, and there's a pool, and there's twinkly lights. And Mike tells her that she could design gardens all over the city. She thanks him and then says that she has to leave for a date where she's going dancing, but she's a bad dancer.
Mike sees Scarlett practicing her dancing before her date, and then he puts on the song that they danced to at their wedding. Scarlett shows him some dance moves from her wedding, and he does the dance with her perfectly. And then he asks if she'll ever get back with her husband. She says she loves him, but no. He spins her around and they get lost in each other's eyes, and then Alex interrupts them, and Scarlett snaps out of it. Alex says, "Do you dance with all your friends' moms?" And Mike says, "Pretty much." Mike then heckles her date when he comes to the door. And then Scarlett, before she goes on her date, gives Mike the divorce papers for Ned to give to actual Mike in her head, and tells him he needs to be there in court on the 27th.
Mike makes Alex go with him to a party at a bowling alley that he knows Maggie and Stan are going to be at. And before they go in, Mike gives Alex a pep talk about talking to his crush, Nicole. And meanwhile, Mike tries to find Maggie at the party but gets cornered by her friends who are all trying to hit on him. He makes them sit down and asks them how they can expect anyone to respect them when they don't respect themselves, giving like a dad talk. And the girls all say, "You don't have to respect me." And Mike just gives up and decides this is some other dad's problem and leaves.
Meanwhile, Alex stands too close to a candle and his pants catch fire while he's talking to his crush. So it doesn't go well.
Then Mike finds Maggie and asks why she's dating Stan. And Maggie says they're moving in together after graduation and she's not going to go to Georgetown. She's going to go to community college to be close to Stan. And Mike says there's no way in hell that's happening. And then he lectures her for throwing away all her hard work for a guy who doesn't care about her. And he forbids her from seeing him anymore. And she says, "Who the hell do you think you are, my father?" And stomps away.
He is the weirdest kid ever.
For sure.
Alex, Mike, and Stan are all on the basketball team together playing a game. Mike passes to Alex instead of Stan, even though Stan is closer to the hoop. The hoop? The net? Whatever. Sports. And Alex makes the shot. They win the game because of him, and then Alex's crush hugs him after the game. Cute.
Ned asks Principal Masterson out and says he'll buy all the students laptops. So she says fine, but it's not a date, and he'll stop his behavior and gifts.
Mike decides to throw a party at Ned's house to celebrate the win and announces it to the school. After school, he sees Maggie crying on the bleachers. Stan dumped her for not having sex with him. Mike comforts her and says it's just the beginning for her, but she's going to meet someone who treats her the way she deserves to be treated. And this obviously means something to her. He's being really nice to her. So she tries to kiss him and hug on him, and he dodges her and keeps her at arm's length every time she tries to come in. It's awkward.
Then we see Ned and Principal Masterson on their date, and he tells her that he's not smooth and doesn't know how to act normal. And he says he's a dork who spends 10 grand on Gandalf the Grey's quarterstaff from the Two Towers. She says that does make him a dork, especially because Gandalf the Grey was only in Fellowship. He returns in Two Towers as Gandalf the White. And then Ned meets her eyes when she says this, and they both start speaking Elvish to each other.
Perfect.
This is big unlock.
At the party, Alex and Nicole seem more comfortable with each other, which is really cute. Stan tries to get back with Maggie, and she says that she's with somebody else now. Mike tells him to get out of here, and then Stan says Mike can have the nun, referring to Maggie, because she doesn't put out anyway. Mike punches him, and then Stan punches back and knocks him out.
Mike wakes up to Maggie rubbing his head and chest and trying to seduce him, and he freaks out, obviously, and tries to fight her off. But then she thinks he's gay because of his coiffed hair and his tight jeans. And he says he's not gay, he's just in love.
With somebody else. And I guess this was a reference to a scene in Back to the Future when McFly wakes up and finds his teenage mother taking care of him.
I forgot about this, but it's totally the same.
Yeah. Scarlett shows up to the party to find Alex, who is out past curfew. And Mike takes her to go see that Alex is okay and that he's like talking to his crush at this party. So he's like, you know, trying to get her excited about what's going on with him and not worried that he's out past curfew. Ned and Jane go back to Ned's place and find out that Mike has thrown this wild party. Ned tries to kick everyone out, but they're not listening to him. And then Jane, because she's principal, whistles and yells that everyone will get 3 months of detention unless they leave. And everyone leaves.
Meanwhile, Mike is showing Scarlett that Alex is finally with his crush, and Scarlett says that he's been such a good role model for Alex. And Mike tells Scarlett that she's a good mom, and they have this deep conversation about it, and then he kisses Scarlett, and Maggie and her friends all see this happen. Scarlett immediately pushes him off, slaps him, and storms off, and then he chases her and tries to tell her his true identity. He's like panicked. He's like, "It is me, you were right." And then Maggie comes up to him and slaps him and calls him a pervert, and her friends each take turns slapping him too.
Jane breaks up with Ned because this isn't the inconspicuous relationship that she wanted. When she leaves, Ned slaps Mike too and says that they're even.
The next day, while Ned and Mike are cleaning up the house, Mike says he lost his family. And Ned says he thinks he really did help his kids, though. Ned tells him he's due in court in 22 minutes, and then he drives him there.
Mike and Ned burst into the court late, and Mike says he has a letter from Mike O'Donnell, the husband in this case. Scarlett says she'd like to hear the letter, so Mike reads it to the court.
It's a heartfelt letter to Scarlett that talks about the first time he ever saw her and their relationship together. And he says he lost his way and blamed her for his failures, and he says he doesn't want her to go through with a divorce. But he says, if I love you, I should let you move on. And so he puts the letter down, he leaves it in court, and he walks out.
Scarlett asks to postpone the case, and she notices that the letter isn't actually a letter, it's just directions to the courtroom. So she's obviously confused that it all seemed to come from Mark, this young boy. And this gutted me because I forgot this happened, and I was like, you mean to tell me that that all came from his heart?
It's my favorite part of the movie. It's so cute. So Mike decides to pursue a basketball scholarship because he says there was no path for him in what he was doing, and he has to move on. But there's not the same excitement that there was about it when he was actually 17.
Scarlett looks at Mike in her old yearbook, and then she sees that the hammock Mike never finished has been built outside in the backyard. There's a note that says, I wish I could finish all the things I started. Mike, with his wedding ring.
Now it's time for the basketball game where a college coach is there scouting, and Scarlett and Maggie show up to the game. Maggie says she can't wait to date college boys at Georgetown.
I'm so glad she changed her mind.
Mm-hmm.
At the game, Ned tells Jane that his best friend lost everything, and it gave him the courage to go after her again. She says she can't be seen with a student's parent, and he says he has a cloak of invisibility. He asks for the chance for them to be friends, and then they start talking nerdy to each other.
Before the game starts, Mike shoots Scarlett a kiss just like he used to in high school, and this is where she realizes that it's really him. She says she can't be here again and has to leave. And Mike quits the game just like he did in high school and gives Alex the ball and says, it's your turn now. And he runs out after her just like he did in high school, and the janitor sees this and smiles.
As he runs after Scarlett down the hallway, he transforms into his 37-year-old self and catches up to her. She says, it is you. He says he can't really explain, but says that he loves her and she's the best decision that he ever made. He just forgot. But he's never going to forget again and will spend the rest of his life making it up to her if she lets him. She stops him and says she missed him and kisses him, and then they walk out of the high school together.
Then we see Mike come into Ned's room to tell him that he packed up his stuff and is giving his key back and saying thanks. But after he opens the door, Jane, Principal Masterson, pops her head up out of the bed, the Star Wars bed. And then Ned does too, and they're both wearing elf ears. And Mike says that he'll see Jane at work, and she calls him Coach O'Donnell. And Mike leaves to go start his first day as basketball coach at the high school. The end.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay, here's why I think this movie was so good, this watch through. In writing classes, they always tell us that, like, the character journey, they need to want something so bad, and then when they get it, it actually turns out that they don't really want it anymore, or it's not the same, and that's how we know that they've changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that they are actually, by the end of the movie, getting what they need instead of what they want. And this is like the perfect example of that. He wants to relive his life and do it differently. He wants that basketball scholarship and to have, gone pro or whatever. And then he does the exact same thing. This movie gives him the best opportunity to leave that game where he would have gotten the scholarship, but now it means nothing to him and he'd rather be with Scarlett. And I just love how, like, history repeats itself in that moment, and it's perfect. Perfect, no notes.
Yeah, I agree. I love that the first scene and the last scene, or at least what's pretty much the first and last scene, are the same. They, like, mirror it. It's really cool. I will say there is an ounce of me that hates that this movie, like, really romanticizes this husband that, like, totally gave up on his relationship and his family, and we're made to believe that him coming back and doing the bare minimum is like, oh my God, he's the best. And they wrapped him in this Zac Efron package that is, like, so lovable.
Yeah.
But I still like it, which is probably toxic, but I do.
Well, I feel like he didn't, now that I think about it, he didn't actually show Scarlett how much he had changed. I don't think. Maybe just the letter.
Mm-hmm.
But you could tell at the beginning she didn't want to divorce him.
No, I think she just felt lost. I think she didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, he would drive me crazy though.
For sure, starting all the projects, never finishing them, talking about
Blaming
how,
you.
yeah, blaming you for not being able to go to college. Like, bro.
She wasn't able to do what she had planned to do either. She had a baby
Right.
and then had another kid like right after that.
Which is way harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of hate him. But by the end, I love him, which I guess is the point. So,
Yeah, me too. I just had this thought now that I'm doing math. It said that he was 37 years old and it had been 20 years, but his oldest kid is not 20. She's in high school.
but she's a senior.
Okay. But like it's probably been like 19 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. That's close enough.
They're rounding.
I was thinking it had been a little bit longer.
Yeah. And also, like, he's in his mid to late 30s. He has so much life left.
True.
To then be like, my life is over. I didn't accomplish anything I wanted to. Like, okay, go to school now then, dude. Your kids are about to be in college.
But I like that he ends it knowing that he actually had his dream all along.
Mm-hmm.
And that is nice.
Yeah, I think the point was just the, like, metaphor is just like, you don't know what you have until you've lost it. I think that was the point.
Yes.
Was for him to, like, wake up and be like, oh, my life is amazing. I got lost in thinking that it was mundane, but it is actually everything that I want. And that is great. That is a great lesson.
Yeah, and I like that he learned how to be like fully present in his life and like appreciate his kids and be there for them and learn about them. And then it turns out, oh, they're really awesome and I love spending time with them.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Love that for you.
Love that.
Love that for them. Actually, really curious about what they do when their dad gets back with their mom and they still think he's an asshole.
Yeah, where's the sequel?
18 again.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star rating or a written review because your support of the podcast means so much to us.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.